Good morning. It's Yvonne from the Fabric Hut. Welcome to my studio. So today we are continuing on with our binding series. We have done pillowcase bindings, we've done facings, we've made bindings. Today we are going to get down to the nitty-gritty, and I'm going to show you how to apply your binding to the front of your quilt, making your perfect mitered corners, and then hand stitching it to the back. So let's jump over to the sewing machine and get started.
Right, I've already prepped my quilt. This is just a little table runner that I'm doing. I have already trimmed my edges. You absolutely do not need to trim it ahead of time. You can have your batting and your backing sticking out here. It's not a problem. I don't know why I trimmed this one ahead of time. I don't usually, but I did. So I have prepared my binding. This is a 2.5-inch binding, and I have sewn it together and I have pressed it wrong sides together. The joins are a diagonal join so that it lays nice and smooth. My preferred method of wrangling batting when I'm doing it is just to have accordion fold it like this, and then for a small project like this I will just set it on my knee. For big projects I will put it on the floor next to me. Many people will wrap them on toilet paper tubes or old spools. However you like to control your batting or your binding, it's perfect. You can do whatever technique you like. Okay, so I always start a good 10 inches from the beginning of my binding. I don't want to start real close because I'm going to manipulate this to make a nice fine binding at the end. I'm also not going to start right up by my corner. I'm going to start at least 15 inches down. On this one, I'm just going to kind of start in the middle of the long side. I'm going to line it up right on the edge of my quilt top. If you have your batting and stuff there, you're lining with the quilt top, not with the batting or the backing. Okay? And then I use a little wider than 1/4 inch. I do like a 3/8 inch seam because this is wide. I don't want to have too much extra after I roll it to the back, but I want to be sure there's enough. So about a 3/8 inch seam works really nicely. And you're just going to start sewing, keeping it even with your line here. I have on my 1/4 inch foot, and I've moved my needle to the left a little, so it's a little bit bigger than 1/4 inch seam. If you have a walking foot or an even feed foot, this is the perfect time to use it. On a big quilt, it's pretty imperative. On this little one that I have, I did a quilt as you go kind of thing on this, so it's already quilted. Nothing's going to shift too much, so I'm not too worried about it. But if you're worried about any shifting, put on your walking foot. It really is the best way. Okay, and you're going to sew to within 1/4 inch of your back. So I can feel with my finger, right here is the edge. I'm going to stop right up here. You can mark it if you need, but as long as you're fairly close, and you can kind of tell. If you go a little bit too far, you can always make it work. And then I will then turn and sew off to the point of the corner. Let me show you. I'm using white thread on purpose so that you can see it. So come down. Here's the edge of my quilt. So I'm about the right distance I've been using here, 3/8 inch, and then directly at an angle. Am I up where you can see me? Okay, let's say that again. So right here's the edge of my quilt. So I stopped the same distance as this from that point to the edge, and then I sewed off at an angle to the point of the quilt. Okay, and here's where the magic happens. We are going to fold it up, and see how that little diagonal right there just pulls it at a perfect quarter or perfect miter right there. I'm going to pull it up until it's nice miter and that everything is even right along this line. See how it is all just a straight line? And I'm going to use my fingernails and I'm just going to hold down at the edge of my quilt and fold my binding back up over my fingers and pinch it down. And now it is square, even here and even here. And if you're wondering about the inside, you can always fold it and make sure it still looks like a nice mitered corner there. But I fold it back up. And you notice I've taken it out from under my needle. And I'm going to turn my corner and I'm just going to start on the edge and sew it down. I'm going to do the same thing until I get to the next corner. And that's why I chose this project, is because the next corner is only 12 inches away. So we'll come zipping over here. And I'm going to stop 3/8 of an inch from my corner, which is about right there. Turn it at a 45-degree angle and sew off the corner. Unhook it from my needle. Okay, remember this now? We're going to take our binding and we are going to fold it to the right, forming a 90-degree curve, right, or a 45-degree angle. Sorry, that's not 90. This is 90. That's 45. 45-degree angle. Catch the edge of our quilt with the fingernails. Just kind of get a placement and flip that binding back over on itself, where it's square here and square here. You see how my back is kind of sticking out a little bit? That's okay. It's the front that I'm worrying about. And now I have it straight here and here. I can fold this back and see my little diagonal. I don't want to sew it with it here because I don't want to hook this down. I want it to stay up and loose. Okay, and then just turn it and go right back to sewing straight where you were all the way around. So that's two corners down. We're halfway. Well, halfway through our corners. We're not halfway through our quilt. We will be soon. And then just zoom on to your next corner. This is my favorite way to bind a quilt. I like to do handwork on it. I just think that is a really nice way to finish a quilt. It looks very professional. I think it looks pretty. Now, do I do this on every quilt? No, not necessarily. On a picnic quilt that's going to be thrown in the back of the car and taken to the beach, I made my son a quilt out of all of his t-shirts, and I put denim on the back of it so that he could have it in the trunk of his car. He could take it to the park and have picnics and then just shake it out. I did not take the time to do a fancy hand-sewn binding on his quilt. I did a machine binding, and that's what we're going to talk about next week, is machine binding. But for quilts that are gifts or important to me, this is the way I'm going to do it. Okay. Maybe one more stitch, pivot it, go off the corner, right there. Okay. We are on corner 3. Angled up to the right, making a nice parallel line. Pinch it down, fold it over, and get it nice and straight. Straight here, and off you go for this last, well, we have one more little 12-inch spot here before our last corner. Then we're going to be putting our ends together. There's lots of different ways to put your ends together. I'm going to show you a couple of them, but then I'm going to do my favorite, the one that I think looks the nicest, that looks seamless. I like seamless. A little bit farther. Is there a right or wrong way to finish it? No, there's not. There's just your preferred way. And so you go with your preferred way. Okay, so we're right here now. We've just turned the corner. I haven't folded it up yet. But see, I'm right here within this part of my quilt, right? So I want to leave a good 10 inches loose to work with my binding. So I'm going to turn this corner, but I'm only going to go about 3 inches or so after that. So that I have room to play with my fabric ends and be able to go. Okay, so I have a seam right here. So I'm so glad that didn't hit on the corner. You know, inevitably one of them will hit on a corner every time, but I got lucky this time. It did not. And we're going to go around that corner. Remember I said I'm only going to go 2 or 3 inches. I'm going to come up to just before this join. And I'm just going to stop there so that we can talk about how to finish this. Okay, so a couple different ways. One way you can do is you can take this beginning piece and open it up and fold it down at a 45-degree angle, just like that. Okay? And if you do that, you can actually come and sew this down. This is a decision you would make at the beginning, but you could do this at the beginning and just sew that down all the way across and start there. And then when you get to this end, you will cut this down and feed it into that little hole like that, and it will be done. You have this then to hand stitch down a little bit because you don't want it to peek up, but it would absolutely work and look lovely. Okay, so that's way one, and that is a perfectly acceptable way to do it. When I do it this way, I don't sew the top down. I start here and I will sew this part down a little bit, and then I'll come over here and start again. I won't sew this top part down because I want to be able to lift it and put in my extra piece and get it in tucked in really nicely. But that's just how I do it. Okay, but my favorite way to do this is my favorite way to make a join. So I'm going to take the other end of my bias or my binding tape, and I'm going to cut off a little bit. I left my selvage on just on this end. It's not in any of the joins, but it's on this end. So because now I can see which way is the width of my binding. Okay, I know it's a 2.5, so there's my width. I'm going to use this little piece to place my cuts so that I can hook these two pieces together the same as I did this one. It's going to be a hidden join. So I have them layered to where I can see both of them. This one is maybe a little close to here, and since I have a lot of room, I'm going to cut off a little chunk of this one just so that I have a little bit more room here to play with. All right, and I'm going to take this little piece that I cut, and I am going to put it on my binding to measure how wide it is. It is 2.5 inches wide, so right there, and see how it's lined up with this underneath one? Can you see that? Right there, it's lined up with the underneath one. These are laying nice and flat, lined up there. I'm going to take and I'm going to cut this top one right on the edge of that binding. Now, if this is a big quilt, I might cut it just a smidge short, but typically that's how it's cut. And I didn't get that very straight. I have it kind of going in at an angle, so let me straighten that off. Okay, now I am going to turn my quilt so it is going the direction I'm going to sew. Okay, here's the magic. Take your top one, right? And just like when you sewed your bindings together, you're going to lay it right side up. Okay, so you're just opening it up right side up. Then you're taking your bottom one and you're reaching it up and putting it on that corner. Just like that. You're not opening it yet, because if you open it first, then you sometimes get it twisted. So you're going to just bring it up and lay it right on top. I hold it with my fingers at this point and fold this up, okay, so that I can get it a little bit more play here. Okay, so I've got it there, and now I'm going to open it up just like that, and I'm going to use my ruler, and I'm going to draw a line diagonally from this corner to the bottom corner, top left, bottom right. Doing it left-handed. That's not me. I'm a right-handed, but I'm going to do it. Okay, I got it. Now, if you are concerned with whether or not you got it twisted or if it's not holding in place, sometimes if they're a little short, they don't hold in place well. Stop at this point and take a pin and put it right up. I push the bottom up, right up that seam, just like that. Okay, so you're not crossing it, you're going the same direction as the seam. And now you can open out your binding and see if it's going to lay the proper way. Once it's sewn, it is going to lay the proper way. There's no twists or anything. So we'll open it back up, lay it back down, and sew that line. Okay, I'm going to show you one more time. Okay, you've come up to your quilt. You've got them all trimmed up. You trimmed it that 2.5 inches that matches. Top one, just open it out right side up. Okay, bottom one, pull straight up and lay it on that edge, just like that. Okay, get your fabric pulled up a little bit. You kind of got to anchor it with your arm because it wants to walk away. It's pulled up, it's matched on that corner. Open it out. And draw your diagonal line. I can see most of my line. I'm just going to darken it up here so you can see it too. Maybe my pen doesn't want to work very well. Maybe it's time for a new pen here. Okay, and you're going to make it right into the corner here. Oh, well, that line wasn't towards the corner. So I'm going to hit this corner right there, just like that. Hold it in your way so I can actually use my right hand and get a good line in there. Okay, there we go. And now sew on that line all the way to the corner. Boy, my first line was really off, wasn't it? Can you see that? Here's where my first line was. I'm so glad I did it twice, because that was my first line and that would have been really wonky. And now open it out. It's going to fit. I always check it another time, then come back and trim off this extra part here. And I trim it about at 1/4 inch. It doesn't have to be exact. And then lay it out and give it a quick finger press. You don't have to take it to your iron. Unless your iron is right by your machine, then if you want to, you can do it. But a little fingernail press will usually do the trick. Right, like that. Fold it in half, making sure it stays the right direction. And finish up your seam. Okay. There we go. And it is down. Now, see these little puckers I got? That is just the top fabric. It's not the underneath fabric. But that is why sometimes I'll cut it, a 1/16 of an inch, a little shorter, because it does want to play in that area. Okay, Now we need to trim our corners, pull back your binding area, and you do have it anchored down, so you kind of just work around the little anchor there and trim off as much bulk as you can without trimming your binding on all four corners, because that's going to make it smooth around those corners instead of real bulky, thick corner. There we go. Okay, and you'll do that on all four corners. Now watch what happens with this little cool corner that we just made. Am I right? I want to make sure I'm right in the camera. Okay. When you push it out with your thumbs and fold it over, look at that perfect quarter or mitered corner right there, right? Then you're going to fold this one in. And depending on which way you're sewing up to it, that's the one that goes down first. So if I'm sewing up to it this way, that one goes in. And then this one goes over top. And look how they just meet up so nicely right here at that corner spot right there. Isn't that cool? So push it out with your thumb, fold it in, and fold it down, and adjust it till you have a perfect miter right there. And if it's nice on the back, look at that, it's nice on the front too. Okay, so we have it all ready now to do our handwork. I like to plan ahead, and I like to use my Wonder Clips that I just spilled all over my table. And I like to clip it every 4 inches or so. I put a clip right on that corner. I like clips over pins because the pins tend to snag my hand sewing thread when I'm using it. The clips don't tend to do that. Just clip, clip, clip. Like that, right onto the end. Okay, I'm not going to do the whole thing because we're just going to use this area right here to do our hand stitching. When you are hand stitching your binding down, a couple of things are important. To have a really nice needle, to have a needle that is very thin and very sharp, but that fits your hand well. So there's a few options. Got these from the Fabric Hut. These are lovely. Obviously, these are going to be too big, but these right here are a wonderful little needle. They're very sharp. They're very thin. Let me see if I can pull one out. That's not what I had in my hand, so I'm going to show you that option here in a second once I get one of these out. But these have, you have like 55 of them. Yeah, 55 of them, so it's a great value. And look how nice and thin that is. It's a nice fine needle that fits your hand well. I like to use the smallest needle that I can use because they tend to be thinner the smaller than they are. This is the first one I found that is 1.5 inches long that is this thin. So I really like it. They're also a little bit flexible. And I find that when I'm doing handwork, my needle will eventually bend a little bit over the end of my thumb because of the way I'm pulling it. And I like that it will bend. It makes it more of a comfortable sew. So this is one of them. Now, if you are having a trouble threading your needle, there's a couple different options. This one is called a self-threading needle. And I don't know if you can see it. Let's see. Let me pull up this black here so you can use that to look at it on. Okay. Can you see that hole in that needle? The eye hole? Pull up an extra light. This little eye hole has a slit on the side. So you bring your thread down into that slit and then pull it up. And so you're not having to thread it this way. This is really great. It's a great needle. And if you need that to help you thread it, this would be just fine. I find it a little bit thick. So it's not my first choice of needle, but it is a phenomenal needle. I also got them from the Fabric Hut, and they come in this cute little cute little container. So these are great needles, and they are the self-threading. So those are nice. But I like the finer one myself. My neighbor likes the self-threads. She uses those for her hand stitching, and they work great for her. I like the thin one, so you find the one that works nice for you, that feels good in your hand, that you're going to be comfortable for a long time with. Now I'm going with this thinner one that has a smaller eye, so of course I need a little help threading it. These are little, look at the little fish threaders. They are smaller than they appear in the picture on the website, but they're fabulous. They have a little groove right here that you put your needle into, okay? And then you put, can you see that little hook right there? That hook goes right through the eye of your needle. Now these needles have a very small eye, so it takes a little bit to get them in there. There it is, it's in. See how it's just hanging from that? And then what I do with my thread? I just had my thread here. Well, oh, there it is. It got pushed to the back of my machine. Here's my thread. I match my thread with my binding color, okay? Don't worry about your back because we're going to be hiding it on the back, but it is going to show a little bit on your binding. Now, even though this looks pretty bright, it blends in with my binding color really nicely. So I cut a 24 30-inch piece of thread. You don't want too long or it will start tangling. Okay, then you take your thread and you lay it across that little hook in that little notch there. Let me see if I can, I'm holding my needle and I want to get it in front of the needle on that little hook, and then you just simply pull the needle, and like I say, it's a little tight. Whoop, I missed it. It's a little tight, so sometimes you have to work a little bit because you have the needle threader, and then you have 2 layers of thread going to come back through that eye. So hook it on that little hook, keep it taut, and then pull that needle off of there and see how easy that was? It is threaded. I will sometimes, if I'm working on a big quilt, I will take my spool of thread, and since that packet of needles had so many in it, I will sit before I even get started and use my little threader here and thread maybe 10 needles onto my spool of thread at once so I don't have to stop and do it when I'm in the zone. Okay, so we have our needle threaded. You can tie a knot however it's comfortable for you. A lot of people lick their finger and wrap it around and roll it off and then pinch it down. That's perfectly fine because these knots are going to be hidden. But one that I find really helpful is to hold my needle in my right hand, pointing towards my left hand, lay my thread on top of my needle, and pinch it with my thumb and forefinger. And then wrap about 4 times. And then move that little wrap into between your finger and thumb and pull it off, keeping it tight all the way while you pull your thread all the way through that knot to the other end. And then there's your little knot. Okay, so that's a really nice small knot. If you are doing something that your knot may show, that'll work. Okay, so here we go. We are going to hand stitch this down. I'm going to start by burying my knot in my seam. Come in here with the batting and everything and just kind of bury my knot there and come out at the edge of the binding. Okay? So I'm out with the edge of the binding. There's my needle or my thread right there. I'm going to just come up through my binding, just a really small little stitch. I probably should be doing this in white so you can see, but small little stitch right there on the edge. Then I'm going to come back down in the same sort of spot and go maybe a little less than 1/4 of an inch and bring it up just on the edge of the binding. Now, you notice I have my index finger back here because I'm feeling for my needle. I don't want it to come through to the front because then you're going to have a maroon stitch on the front. So if my finger's there, I can feel that I'm staying within my backing and my batting, and come up a little bit away. And you see how that stitch just kind of gets hidden right there. You can't even see that I've done 3 stitches there, can you? Taking off your clip as you're coming to it. Go down roughly at the same spot, up and through the edge of the binding. Down at the same spot, up at the edge of the binding. And you actually can get going pretty fast. I did a whole quilt in one evening. It was a lap quilt about 65 by 70, and I was able to just sit while I was watching a movie and get that whole thing bound in about 2.5 hours. So just like that, and see how you absolutely cannot see those stitches? That is what you want. You want just completely invisible stitches. You know what? I am going to change and do it with some white thread, just so you can see that I really am taking very small little bites. So let me get this one threaded. Doing it without my little birdie or fishy threader, just because I don't know where I set it. Okay. Almost got it. There we go. I got it. All right. Let's do that needle, that knot thing again. Pinch it to your needle, wrap it around about 4 times, hold it snug, and pull it all the way through to the other end. Okay. I'm going to just jump ahead here, bury my needle, or bury my knot, fold it over, and come up right through the edge. Okay, so there's our first stitch. Oh, what did I knock down? I don't know. Okay, just a little right on the edge of the binding. And see how tiny those little stitches are? And they're just going to hide right in that binding if you're using the same color. They almost hide even if you're using a completely contrasting color. Just like that. All right? You can do it. I know you can. When you get to your corner, take off your clip, sew all the way up to here, and then bring your needle up in the middle like that, so that when you fold it back down, you can catch the very corner of this, take 1 stitch, come back down here, and go again. Oops, sorry, bumped you. So I hope that's helpful. This is a very relaxing way to bind. I'll sit out on my porch in the sun sometimes, or I watch TV in the evening when you're too tired to continue doing anything else, but you don't want to feel like you're not doing anything. This is a great way to pass your time. And it just looks so lovely. If you have any questions, drop a question in the comments section and I will answer what I can. And thank you for joining me today for our binding series of hand binding, hooking to the front and hand binding. Next week, we are going to hook to the back and machine bind. So we will see you then. Thank you and happy quilting.